How old are you? 8. Where did you learn that melody? It's such a nice melody. Where did you learn it? Online. You take music classes online? You take what online?
We take harmonic classes from Prabhu from Maharaj.
Okay.
We learn this tune on YouTube.
I like it. Well done. Keep going. I've been here many times before, right? My second home. I don't even have a first home either. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavati Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Siva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. Well, because it's Ram Navami coming up, we're going to speak about Prahlada Maharaj. What? Because of the Memorial Day weekend is going to be focused on Ram Leela, lessons from Ramayana. the thought was a particular devotee wanted to hear this topic, and we'll speak a little bit just before Ram Navami about Lord Ramachandra, and the rest of the evenings will be this. Teachings of Prahlada Maharaj. Starting with chapter 5, he is teaching Hiranyakasipu and also his teachers, Shanda and Amarka. We're not going to get really far into chapter 5, but we'll begin. One of the nice drawings I like is this one. This is Prataparudra at Narendra Sarovar. You can see the Sarovar down there. That's the waves of the water. Offering his obeisances before these assembled devotees, where Gadadhar Pandit is reciting Srimad Bhagavatam and all the others are listening. And there's a painting that has everybody who's who situated here, identified by name. Directly in front of the tree, that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and to his right is Nityananda, and to his left is Advaita. And then there's others, without naming all the names. Standing up, I don't know why he's a little chubby, but it's Haridas Thakur, hanging some cloth in a tree. And the very submissive King Prataparudra is paying his obeisances before all the Vaishnavas as they're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. And you probably know, but it's nice to hear it again and again. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would hear Srimad Bhagavatam daily from Gadadhar Pandit for some time, for a few hours every day. Gadadhar and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were associates from childhood. And in transcendental Leela, Radha and Krishna, in the mood of Srimati Radharani, the manifestation of Srimati Radharani in Gaura Leela, his reciting Srimad Bhagavatam to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the devotees. In Chaitanya Bhagavat, it is said, he particularly liked hearing Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlada Maharaj, both of whom are Vaikuntha-vasis. Of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a Vrajabasi mood, but he particularly liked both of them and heard them from beginning to end, and after hearing them from beginning to end, what did he say? Who knows what he said? Say it again, say it again. And then he would say it again. In other words, turning the topic. So we've all heard the story of Prahlad many times, and it's nice to hear it again and hear it again and hear it again and hear it again, following the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because it's all spiritual, one doesn't become tired of hearing something all spiritual. There's always spiritual satisfaction and spiritual joy to be experienced anew. Now this is at Narendra Sarovar, and the common place where Gadadhar Pandit would recite Srimad Bhagavatam was at the Tota Gopinath temple. There's two photos of Tota Gopinath. One we see where his legs are down, but he's actually in a sitting posture. And those aren't his real legs because he's sitting. And the dhoti, that cloth that's before him, in the upper photograph. That's the normal situation. But he's sitting cross-legged. And worshipping Gopinath, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and other associates. You can't get any better than that. And our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, also derived great satisfaction reciting verses of the Bhagavatam. He had certain verses that he particularly favored and would recite them again and again. And he would never tire of reciting them again and again, and we would never tire of hearing them again and again. So it's like that. In the introduction to chapter 6, we're going to be discussing chapter 5. Here's Prahlada of the Prahlada Nrsimha temple in Sridham Mayapur and Chandan Yatra. Here's what Prabhupada writes. By accepting the lotus feet of Prahlada Maharaj, who was in the Parampara succession, one will be able to understand the mode of spiritual life. In accepting this mode of activity, there is no need for material qualifications. Later in chapter 10 of the same 7th canto, Prahlada Maharaj says to Lord Nrsimhadev that Lord Vishnu, he, the personality of Godhead, sent Prahlada to come to the material world to teach the way of pure devotional service. So Prabhupada is just essentially saying the same thing. One will be able to understand the mode of spiritual life, and the mode of spiritual life is pure devotional service. So he's a character study, an acharya, a superlative example of the way of pure devotional service. So the story begins like stories sometimes begin, once upon a time. The king of demons, Hiranyakasipu, took his son Prahlada on his lap and very affectionately inquired, "My dear son, please let me know what you think is the best of all subjects you have studied from your teachers." Now, the teachers assigned to teach Prahlada and his classmates were Shanda and Amarka. We're going to hear from them shortly. And they were sons of Shukracharya. Shukracharya is the lead priest and brahmana guiding the demons. And he had two sons, Shanda and Amarka. So that his sons were to train Hiranyakashipu's sons. And Hiranyakashipu's inquiry is presumably that, what did you learn from Shanda and Amarka? But he didn't say, what did you learn from Shanda and Amarka? He said, the best of all subjects you have studied from your teachers. So Prahlada didn't say, oh, you mean Narada Muni. He didn't say that. But he did say, very, very nice verse. Let's say it together responsively. Tat sadhu manye suravarya dehinam sada samudvigna diyam asatgrahat edvatmapatam griham andakopam manam gatoya darim ashayeta. Anyone that's heard Srila Prabhupada's lectures, you've heard this verse many times. And there's going to be some more verses that we've also heard many times. And some of the key words, he is addressing his father as the Varya amongst the asuras. He's the best among the demons. He didn't say dad or papi. So you can see the screen? Okay. Can you see the screen over there? Barely, huh? Okay. No, I'll just leave it. Asura Varya, the best of the demons. I probably heard that at least 100 times. Oh, best of the demons. Respectful. Oh, best of the demons. And Sada Samudvigna. Sada Samudvigna. Sada means always, and Samudvigna means filled with anxieties. Sadastandodvigna dhyam. One whose intelligence is always filled with anxieties. And asat grahat, the asat, we know. What does asat mean? Oh, come on. What does sat mean? An asat inception, and take shelter there. So the intelligence of such a person who takes shelter in I and mine or the temporary is always filled with anxieties. So that's the negative. And then the positive. Hitvatma patam. One should give up this place where there's no spiritual culture. Dad, head for the forest. Grihamanda kupam, because it's just like a dark well. Andha kupam. Vanam gato, go to the forest and take shelter of Hari. Oh, best of the asuras. The Prabhupada's translation. Oh, best of the asuras, king of the demons. As far as I've learned from my spiritual master, any person who has accepted a temporary body and a temporary household life is certainly embarrassed by anxiety because of having fallen in a dark well where there's no water but only suffering. Not a pretty picture, right? But there's a pretty picture. One should give up this position and go to the forest. Vana. And then Prabhupada adds a little extra. More clearly, one should go to Vrindavan, where only Krishna consciousness is prevalent, and should thus take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, Ashrayeta. Just seeing the pictures of Krishna and Shyamasundar, Radha Shyamasundar, you can easily fill up many, many beautiful photographs of their lordships. Somebody sent me the photograph of the deities on Holi. Wow. It looked like they got sprayed. It's really nice. Just because the altar was so colorful. The background was colorful, their garments were colorful. But it wasn't, anyway, it was very nice. It might have been Prahlada that sent that to me, because Prahlada has been in Vrindavan. Anyway, nice painting, nice photograph. So Hiranyakasipu hears this, And he right away goes into friend-enemy consciousness. This is the intelligence of children spoiled by the words of the enemy. Immediately, friend's enemy. So it's going to come up further. So we'll spend some time further. So he becomes very angry, and he tells Chandandamarka, this boy has been polluted by someone. Make sure he doesn't get further polluted. Teach him properly. Take special care. This is my son. So they're the Brahmanas and he's the Kshatriya, but they're afraid he's a terrorist. So they're very obedient, and they take Prahlad back to the Asura Kula and start working him over. And he doesn't go in. He's not interested. He has interest, and it's not what they're saying. And so they become very disturbed. And not only he doesn't accept what they say, but he says what Narada Muni says. So they become really angry. Brahmanas sometimes become angry. How have you learned these instructions? How has your intelligence been spoiled in this way? So this is the friends and enemy topic. Prabhupada goes into it at length in his commentary because Prahlad says it directly. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose external energy has created the distinctions of my friend and my enemy by diluting the intelligence of men. Indeed, I'm now actually experiencing this, although I had previously heard it. Doesn't give his name. From authoritative sources. Now, they don't know anything about Narada Muni and how Narada Muni instructed and all of those things. They don't know. But it's along with this spiritual conception of self. How is one to see the spiritual conception of life around us? Because I've been out and about in college land for the last 10 days. I've been interacting a lot with young people who, reading the expressions on their face, and it's so fundamental that we're not the body, but it just doesn't easily go in. They can acknowledge, but anyway. My observation doesn't go in, and how important it is that it goes in, and then what's the consequence if it doesn't, and what's the consequence if it does. The whole I and mine conception that goes along with false ego. Just a little sharing. I was at an evening gathering yesterday. It was largely middle-aged people, entirely Western middle-aged people. And there was one of the discussions was the cause of negative emotions. It's one of the the group participation questions. What's the cause of negative emotions, anyways? And the first thing somebody said was false ego. It's like, wow. Usually you beat around the bush, but they didn't. Because behind this and behind that and behind that and behind that is the false ego conception that covers living entities. And once that false ego conception covers the living entity, you're lost. Moga shamoga karma no moga jnana vicheta saha. You're defeated and defeated and defeated, and you're defeated before you even open your mouth or do something or do nothing. As far as defeated in terms of the soul's journey coming up the evolutionary scale to the human form of life, and then getting the opportunity to get some air and then back down again. If that opportunity isn't properly used, and that false ego is the binding force behind the mind and the intelligence and the other activities that cover the living entity. So when one is covered by false ego, then the I and mind conception is there. And as soon as the I and mind conception is there, there's persons that assist me and mine, and there are persons that don't, and that's the friend and enemy standard. Now, as soon as I see little children, now I'm going to think about you're playing harmonium at 8 years of age. Are you going to learn harmonium too? Uh-oh, he's uncomfortable. You can think about it. And chant Hare Krishna, of course. Chant Hare Krishna. Ah, he's smiling. Good. Okay. So Prahlada is saying, he's not disclosing who he heard from, but who he heard from was Narada. And from Narada he heard about friend and enemy. And he's innocent. And now he's seeing it. He heard it. He's understood it from hearing it. But now he's seeing it. It's not like he hadn't seen it before, but now I'm seeing it. This is it. And so how to see beyond friend and enemy? What's that seeing like? Samadarshana, pandita samadarshana. You don't see friend enemy. You can see distinctions. That's important to understand. When someone becomes an elevated person like Prahlada, they can see what's what, or anyone that becomes elevated. You can make the intelligence, the function of intelligence is discernment, or in the good sense, discrimination. In the good sense, discrimination means this is this and that's that, and they're not the same. There's distinctions. That's what intelligence does. It discerns one thing from another thing. So one's discerning doesn't become anesthetized. You can see what's what. And you can see the modes of nature, and you can see all kinds of things. Even better than you could see if you weren't spiritually centered. You can see much, much better. But when you can see those things, the diversities, there's an equal vision at the same time. The oneness amongst diversity idea. And so there's not friends, enemies. Like he's not calling his father, nor is he calling his teachers enemies. They're calling whoever he heard this from the enemy. But he's not seeing like that. The Pandita Samadarshana verse is the characteristic with spiritual conception, and then others are not friend enemy, others are of the same spiritual essence with different coverings. Prabhupada in his purport naturally goes to the teaching that all living entities are eternally servants of Krishna. Not only they're spiritual, their swarup is that they're living entities, parts of the Supreme, and as parts of the Supreme, they're meant for service. That's who we are. It's a nice painting. There's a nice devotee paying obeisances to the Radha Krishna. And then, okay, see Radha and Krishna, and then what about everybody else? And when you have discerning capacity, no cares. It depends on Kadishta, Majjhima, and Uttama platform. But if you have some spiritual vision, then if you're the eternal servant of Krishna, and other living entities are Krishna's parts and parcels, then the vision is to see others as master. So our nomenclature in ISKCON, we're trained to refer to others as Prabhu. Now we make a distinction, Prabhu and Mataji or Dasi or something, but not in a higher, lower, but in the mood of a relationship. Here's someone who's part and parcel of Supreme, especially amongst the devotees, as we offer others respect. Anyone here besides me has been listening to Hari Parshad Prabhu's classes on Nectar of Instruction or Upadesh Amrita? He's on class 27, and he's only in verse 5. He's going very, very deep into the topic. And the most recent one was, in text 5 is, respect should go to anyone who chants Krishna's name even once. There's a lot of discussion. What about Kamsa? Or anyone that chants Krishna. So anyway, but then the next is those who not only chant Krishna's name once, but they have received diksha, and they're regularly engaged in worship of Krishna. They're to be offered obeisances. That's the Prabhu. We offer obeisances. So seeing other as Prabhu or master, supposing somebody's not initiated, we don't okay, I'll be respectful, but I'm not going to pay obeisances. It's not that kind of pecking order kind of thing. It's the essence of all relationships, particularly those who are engaged in service in one form or another, minimally chanting Krishna's name once. The principle is respect. And when you respect somebody, how do you demonstrate that? You do some service for them. A devotee out of natural humility addresses every other living entity as Prabhu. So ant Prabhu and mosquito Prabhu and cockroach Prabhu. Just yesterday, I was working at my computer. This really large ant started crawling across my computer screen. Prabhu, could you please move? Okay. A devotee always wants to learn from others. These are things that statements from Prabhupada in his commentary on this section. And of course, from respecting other living entities then goes to the spiritual master. And while respect goes to others, we learn about how to respect others by the teachings that we receive from our spiritual master. Uncultured people need to learn from someone who's cultured. Gosh, how did Prabhupada do it? He took people from all different types of backgrounds and put on an ironing board and made them, smoothed out. Put them in a shower and made them clean. What a wonderful task. And so not everyone got clean, but he was persistent and powerful to give the purification method and try to teach us how to offer respect to one another and to serve one another. Not only his own members, but those who are beyond the immediate Vaishnava community. And that becomes, I'll just share because I just came from a upstate New York where it was 100%, non-resident Indian audiences. So it was 100%, whatever you want to call them, the other people. And one of the things that they repeatedly would come up is how to help person from a Christian background understand Krishna consciousness. So just in driving here, just sharing, this is an Indian neighborhood. I mean, there's a sprinkling of some those that aren't Indian, but it's largely an Indian neighborhood. And where I was, it was, I saw one Indian. And otherwise, it's, everybody else. So the world is filled with everybody else's. And we should be extending ourselves, and how to extend yourself to those other people. That's what Prabhupada did. He was certainly, by body type, he was Indian, by culture and by upbringing and by everything. But, he was somehow able to attract all kinds of people from all cultures and all backgrounds. Powerful magnet. And to teach us how to behave with one another. And starting with how to behave towards him. I've been listening November, December, and in the beginning of January. Prabhupada spent, I don't know how long he stayed in Bombay, but every class is in Bombay. And he's appointing again and again, gesturing or speaking about his American, European disciples, and they'll do anything for me. And I haven't bribed them, and they've given up stuff, and how do they give up stuff? And it's the purification of, the process of bhakti. He was relying upon us. It was part of a strategy to help the people of India take Krishna consciousness seriously, to look at these white elephants. So anyway, but he played that card again and again. And it's true. It's true. We just gave everything. We didn't think about it. I mean, we thought we weren't mindless, but it wasn't. It was bhakti. He drew bhakti from our hearts. So that's a primary answer to people that are wishing to help people who are kind of fixed in their ways, to attract by your good quality and your good character and how you deal with each other, and be good examples of Krishna consciousness and Krishna conscious Sangha. It's very attractive. Very attractive. So Prabhupada is speaking in his commentary here about master and servant. He's going to invite us, his reader, to go beyond duality. So he's taking the Prahlada story and teaching lessons of life through the Prahlada story. Krishna is the Supreme Master, and all of us are servants of the Supreme Lord and are therefore on the same platform. He's the Master, we're servants. So we should respect other servants, not just the Master, but we should respect other servants because they're servants too. Rise above duality. Explicitly in his commentary, thinking one person a friend and another an enemy is in the realm of duality. So that's Shanda and Amarka. In the realm of duality. And the servant cannot be equal to the master, so we make the distinction, yes, the master is on one platform. Now, if we are being encouraged to respect others as master, where does that leave us? We're the servant. In in Rupa Goswami's teaching, in verse number 5, the higher platform of a Vaishnava is not only they chant, but they chant in a regulated way, and they chant in a regulated way, and they serve the Supreme Lord, and they're freed from the tendency to criticize others. It's just explicitly expressed. They're free from the tendency to criticize others. It's a big point. I really like the verse. I like how Hari Prashad is handling the topic. I'm planning, for your information, on the little seminar on Vaishnava etiquette, drawn a large part from Rupa Goswami's writings, but other things as well. And because I feel it's very essential. I mean, it's right here in Prahlada's Teachings 101 to Chanda and Amarka, but sometimes, we don't get it. Sometimes we don't get it. And then people see and behave in a way that's, carrying their material baggage with them into the culture of spiritual life. So the verse that Prahlada said to Hiranyakasipu was that place where there is no spiritual culture, Hidvatmakupam. One should give it up. It's like a blind well. So he goes on. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with the living entity because of his devotional service, one becomes a pandita and does not make distinctions between enemies, friends, and himself. Intelligently, he then thinks. This is the elevated platform, the Uttama platform. Every one of us is an eternal servant of God, and therefore we are not different from one another. Has anyone here read some of Bhakti Tirtha Swami's writings? Anyone here read some of them? Mukunda, have you read some of them? It's good for young people. Young people because he's real. I mean, he was in a black body, and he was discriminated against because he was in a black body, and he had to deal with it. And someone else is in some other kind of body, and but the principle is a nice principle. And when he wrote for people that struggle with stuff like that, the emotions of being discriminated against, or being treated badly, or treated harshly, and how to be resilient. Here's a little story, Prabhupada's story with Bhakti Tirtha Swami. He was a little background. He was from a ghetto upbringing in Cleveland. He tells a story that in his closet he had 2 shirts. And he brought a friend home one day, and his friend had a big rip in his one shirt. So his mother went to Bhakti Tirtha Swami's closet and gave him one of his 2 shirts. And he said, "That's my mother." And I learned about, respecting other people from my mother. Well, we had next to nothing, and she was charitable with whatever she had. So that's in him. And then, from a ghetto background, he got at a particular time in American history, there was an attempt on the part of Ivy League schools to give special facilities to people from poor backgrounds. So he got a full scholarship to Princeton University. full scholarship to Princeton University. And he graduated, whatever the top, in India is called the gold medalist or something, the topper, valedictorian of his class, and he was the president of his graduating class, both academically and socially. And during that period of time, anyone with those kinds of credentials, all kinds of doors would open. He was on his way for stardom in the material world, like many other people from black backgrounds that were very bright and very articulate, and he was a very powerful person. And I remember specifically once upon a time, we did lots of book distribution. One of the places, I very specifically remember, we had parties going to colleges, and we went to Princeton University. He got a book. When he got a book, it was Ishopanishad. He started reading the book, and he took interest in it. And he came to meet Prabhupada, and he became convinced that he should become a devotee. So he left his stardom and became a Hare Krishna devotee. You never know. But you plant seeds. You never know. So he tells this story that he went to Prabhupada one time and said it was like a big deal because he was in this black body and was headed for stardom in the material world, and he gave it up and became a Hare Krishna guy. And he said to Prabhupada in a private meeting, there's discrimination in ISKCON. He didn't get too far with explaining the details of what he had experienced, but Prabhupada's answer was two. That's not good. And then he said to him, and you're being disturbed by it, you know better than they are. Whoa. I mean, how is Prabhupada going to respond to the fact that there's racial discrimination in ISKCON? What's the Acharya going to say? You know better than they are. From his mother giving his one of two shirts and Prabhupada saying, you know better than they are. So, how to be gifted at helping people as much as you can, knowing that they're going through the same hardships that you are. I'm mentioning this in part because in the room that I was staying for some number of days, there was one of his books. I started looking it over. It was a book on surrender, and he gets right into it. I recommend, Mukunda, you to work with young people. Find some of the things that he says or have them read some of his things. Because I know some young people that they really like, the spiritual warrior, and how he's just so genuine. He speaks to young people. I mean, he speaks to the heart. That's why he speaks to young people. So how to go beyond? It's important for us, looking around the room, the non-resident Indians in the room. It's important for us to go beyond the bodily conception and to see the Samadarshana, Pandita Samadarshana, as far as we can at least, and cultivate Vaishnava decorum in our speech and our character and our conduct with one another, because it's noticed by people who are from outside. How do we conduct ourselves? I don't know if you've had some stories. I can share with you some stories of people that came, got a little bit close to the devotees, and then went away because they don't like how the devotees deal with each other. Does that surprise you? Shouldn't surprise you. Now there's something cultural that holds some of us together, and there's things that the cultural bridge isn't there for some people, and there's a reason why, we have the congregational makeup that we have, and part of it is we don't carry ourselves well amongst one another. And that's why I'm hammering on the point a little bit, because it's a fact. So here's Prabhupada speaking, writing in the Bhagavatam, friend and enemy. Only by the grace of the spiritual master and Krishna can one have a clear intelligence to understand that no one is one's enemy or friend. And then his mission. A Vaishnava treats other living entities neither as friends nor as enemies, but instead tries to spread Krishna consciousness, teaching everyone that we are all one as servants of the Supreme Lord, as much as he did with, I really like it, Bhakti Tirtha Swami. You're no better than they are. If you're disturbed, you're no better than they are. So we become disturbed, and others that go away they become disturbed. But we can't blame them because they don't have that training either. And we should be beyond that shortcoming, or strive to become beyond that shortcoming. We should strive to come to the proper platform, the Krishna conscious platform. And it's right here in the Prahlada story. Ekatvam anupashataha. You know the verse? A devotee should see the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be situated in everyone's heart, and should also see every living entity as an eternal servant of the Lord. This vision is called ekatvam. Ekatvam. Oneness. Not the impersonal oneness, but the Vaishnava oneness. Because there's something nice about oneness, and there's something unnice, unpleasant about conflict. So people want to become conflict-free. They want to strive for oneness, but it's an artificial oneness. What's the real oneness? Here it is. A little sharing, because it's nice to get out of your comfort zone and find what other people are up to, so we can be more relatable to other people than besides people that are like ourselves. So a strong, if people have an interest in spirituality these days, where does it go if they don't have association of devotees? It goes to the oneness idea. Kind of smoothly, put everything into a blender, turn it on high speed. And that's oneness. It's all one. Exactly what that means, it just sounds nice. It's a euphemism. So then as soon as it comes to varieties, then it clashes with the oneness idea. What was one of the discussions, one of the questions, answers in your group? Anyway. God, I hate you. Because the enmity between one and another arises from enmity towards the Supreme. If one thinks that the Lord is an enemy, his intelligence is pashabuddhi, the intelligence of an animal. So this is Shandamarka, Brahmanas, teaching pashabuddhi katha. If one actually understands that every one of us is a servant of the Lord, where's the question of enemy or friend? Now Prabhupada is drilling on this. He hasn't gone very far into the chapter, but he's taking a lot of time. Why is he taking a lot of time? Because it's a reality in the world, and the realities in the world have a tendency to play themselves into the lives of those of us who are taking up bhakti because we're not clean yet. So he wants to bring us to that higher consciousness. One should be friendly for the service of the Lord. One should praise another's service to the Lord. One should not be proud of his own service. There's a Vaikuntha competition he speaks about. You know what Vaikuntha competition is? You know what Vaikuntha is? What's Vaikuntha? It's the name of the spiritual world. You got to turn the volume up a little bit. You can sing strongly. The person in the spiritual world. A place in the spiritual world. Vaikuntha, okay. So what's Vaikuntha competition? That's just because this is speaking about oneness, and there's a master, and we're servants of the master, but is there competition in Vaikuntha? There's not material competition, because material competition is beat the other guy. Spiritual competition is who can please the master the most. And one pleases the master the most, you go, oh, wow, well done. You sang such a nice melody tonight. It doesn't mean, and the rest of you. It's, you're an inspiration for others to serve. They may do something other than sing and play harmonium. They may something else. And do that nicely. And that's Vaikuntha competition. What's the pleasure of the Supreme Lord? That's our interest. That's Vaikuntha competition. So sing nicely. He plays mridanga nicely. Somebody else can cook nicely. Maybe someone can dance nicely. Maybe someone can recite slokas nicely. Maybe someone can be kind to others nicely. That's Vaikuntha competition. Who's going to please Krishna? That's Vaikuntha competition. No question of enmity between servants. Look at this. Prabhupada is really drilling. Chapter 15, text 15. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart, giving dictation according to the attitude of the servant. Who knows the Sanskrit? 15:15? Don't say it out loud. Just raise your hand if you know it. I see one hand. I see two hands. I see three hands. I see four hands. I see five. I see six. Who put their hand up way in the back? Go ahead. How's it start? Go ahead. Prabhu, can you speak the verse? You can read it. Okay. Let's see if somebody can recite it. Mataji? Yes, that's the verse.
Jnanam apohanam cha vedeshta sarverahamev vedyo vedanta krita ved vidiveda chaham.
That's Vaikuntha competition. She recited very nicely. That's a nice verse to learn. I see 4 or 5 young men over here. Any of you want to take up the service of learning this verse for tomorrow evening? Or no, not tomorrow. Tomorrow's China. By Saturday. Saturday midday. Any one of you want to volunteer to learn that verse? Not everybody at once, please. You going to try? Okay. Saturday midday class. If I forget, I probably won't forget, but you won't forget. You got the hot seat now, boy. Ooh. So see if you can learn the verse, and we'll say, well done. Maybe that will inspire someone else. Oh, he did so nicely. Maybe I can learn it too. That's Vaikuntha competition. So, Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, and from him comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. So, he reciprocates with us. He's very busy. but he's doing nothing. His consciousness is all pervasive, but he's not stressed out because his power is without any limit. The non-devotees challenge the authority of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the Lord dictates in such a way that the non-devotees forget the Lord's service. A devotee very sincerely wants to render service to the Lord. The Lord dictates in a different way. Now look, all of this is drawn directly from Prabhupada's purports. I'm going to say something and just like put this on hold and I'll come back to it. The second time around, I'm spending every Monday morning, our time is Monday evening, China time, and we've been having a seminar series on something. So the latest seminar series with them is Light of the Bhagavad. And it's my third time through Light of the Bhagavad. And I'm so much appreciating how amazing is Prabhupada's writing capacity. How amazing. Now, others are also amazing, but he's so close to us. His writing is so amazing. He takes something way over here, and the next thing you know, he's giving you he's giving the reader the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, just from scenes of nature. So masterfully. And I've gotten to the point where I just keep saying it like every class, like 4 times. How masterful is our spiritual master, our founder Acharya. Wow. I mean, he's describing just this Monday morning class, he's describing the mood of love and separation that the gopis feel for Krishna in terms of the moon in the autumn night. To an audience that doesn't know anything about anything. And it's so beautiful. And it's so smooth and so easy to understand and so relishable. So having done that, by the way, I requested Swavas when I was doing this 1 year ago. Do you have any plan to reprint Light of the Bhagavad? Because it's out of print. So he just sent me a note saying it's back, it's in the warehouse. Place your order, because I requested it. So because he did that, I want to reciprocate with Swavas, because he's such a wonderful devotee. They don't have money to burn, but he printed it. So I'm going to do the seminar again. But it's not up north, it's down in Texas. Because the Potomac Temple, Ananda Vrindavan Dasi, bless her heart, after so many years, they're having their temple opening and Thanksgiving weekend. So I don't want to compete with what they're doing on the East Coast. So I decided I'm going to go to Texas. And I asked the devotees, here's some menu, pick from the menu, Light of the Bhagavad. Okay, so Swavas is going to be happy. But I'm going to be like jumping out of my skin because it's so amazing what Prabhupada has and when he wrote that was 1962. And his writing skill and his realizations and how to communicate, so much more here. This is 7th Canto, Chapter 5. And what's he doing? It's powerful. So please don't just hear these, oh, I've heard that one, no, it's next. Hear it in a deep way. Because what's he doing? He knows the audience. Of course, his audience is the world, but he was writing this thing, it was for the world, 1962, for a group of people in Japan that didn't know anything about anything. And by the time they get to the seventh canto, they think they know something. But he wants to, he's pulling us out. The whole of the Prahlada Maharaj story is to bring us to pure devotional service. It's like, chapter 7 is devotional service. Chapter 8 is devotional service. Chapter 9 is pure devotional service. That's Prabhupada's explanation. Pure devotional service. And that's what Prahlada is teaching. So to get this together is essential to get to pure devotional service. Everyone, this is our last slide. Everyone is actually a servant, not an enemy or friend. And everyone is working under different directions from the Lord, who directs each living entity according to his mentality. Although we're all servants, we're taking dictation from the same Lord, who is situated in our heart. And those who are like this, he gives this. Those who are like that, he gives that. And he's all the while inviting us, just as Prabhupada is all the while inviting us to come to pure devotional service. He's just taking the teachings of Prahlada and massaging the teachings, or like making sandalwood paste from sandalwood, and the fragrance comes out by repeating the message. The fragrance of the lotus feet of Krishna can be experienced just by taking the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and the teaching to Prahlada and saying them again and again. The fragrance of the lotus feet of the personality of God can be experienced. The fragrance of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead can be experienced simply by taking the messages of Prahlada Maharaj, who was at the Lord's lotus feet, experiencing that shelter and repeating them again and again, like making sandalwood paste from sandalwood. It's within the messages themselves. And when that appeal for pure devotional service awakens in the heart, what can stop you? What can be an obstacle that you can't go on the other side of? Nothing. It's something, but it's insignificant in comparison to the power of pure devotional service. Just as Prahlada, look what he's doing. I mean, the way that he's speaking to Hiranyakasipu, and he does it again, and Shanda and Namarka, these are henchmen. They're meant to train him up to be an asura. That's their explicit instruction. Not only keep him away from Vaishnavism, train him up. And it doesn't go in. So where'd you get these teachings? Oh, I can see, friend enemy. Look at this. And one who is on an elevated platform, they don't see like that. So I can understand. You're not a teacher. They did say it like that, but I don't want to learn from you. I want to learn from Narada Muni. Okay. Part 1, Prahlada's teachings, chapter 5. Let's see if there's some discussion. It's nice coming to Naperville. It's like very nice. Very enthusiastic devotees like to hear. Get clean inside by Srimad Bhagavatam recitation and hearing. Yes, our host.
Hare Krishna.
Just keep going.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Especially this verse 15.5, Sarvasya Chaham Hridaya Sannivisto. When we are working with other devotees, each person Krishna may be inspiring each person differently.
Yeah.
And when resources are limited, we
Yeah.
tend to be strongly opinionated on how we are inspired. How do we manage that?
With a smile. With respect. And you carry on with your service with respect. And if you do that, the bumps and the kinks and everything can much more easily get worked out, if I've understood your question correctly. Your question is, two devotees have inspiration and they're different and they clash a little bit. That's your question. What to do? Yeah, that's my answer. With your respect. Don't get into a tussle. Is there diversity in the spiritual world? Diversity is just fine. Maybe the salt doesn't like the pepper, and the pepper doesn't like the salt. Or the chili doesn't like the honey, but they all have their place. And if your mood is one of appreciation, then to bring about a cooperative mood and effort, to combined effort, is much easier than if it's the conflict mood. It's not that, it's this. They're saying the other. It's not that, this, it's that. No. You have one child or two? Okay. Do they sometimes disagree? Sometimes? What do you do? Dad, what do you do? So what's Krishna going to do? One wants to do this, so play nicely. You have some place over here, you have some place over there. And sometimes they can do stuff together, when it's especially Prasadam. And Kirtan, so they can do some things together. You allow them to be who they are. And whoever they are is going to, chances are, if you allow them to grow, it's going to modify, if not like major. Anyway, parenting, it's fun. So besides parenting, it's just, there's Krishna. There's the spiritual masters, plural, in ISKCON today, and there's our founder Acharya and the predecessor Acharyas, and we want to look to them, what's pleasing to them. And then it makes it easier to work through where someone wants to do it this way and someone wants to do it that way. Or not even this way, that way, just two different things. Anyway. The training is the attention goes to the Supreme Master and those ideal representatives of the Supreme Master. And that's, when you're situated in more elevated consciousness like that, you're part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And work towards it. If you're, to wherever you are, work towards that. Right behind you. There's two behind you. Balaram.
Maharaj, one reflection about, you said the ant on the laptop, so I was thinking, recently I was hearing
It was a big
about,
one too.
So recently I was hearing about Narottam Das Thakur. When he goes to the granary, he says to the snakes, because they said there are thousands of snakes, don't go there. So when he goes there and he says, he called the snakes and said, I am on the mission of Lord Chaitanya. Please make your way outside so that I can take, I have a responsibility here. I have to find the deity of Lord Chaitanya. Yeah. So that all the snakes goes away and they don't know where they go. Get out of the forest, get out of the granaries. I was thinking, they're also the servants of, in one way, they're also servants, but they could understand the feeling and the way Narottam Das Thakur said. So, in the same context, I was thinking Srila Prabhupada had come for all of us to give the real intelligence to make us understand that we are not the body, we are the spirit, soul, and the eternal servants of Krishna. The intelligence is the main thing. When we look at Krishna Varnam Sa Krishnam, Sangopangastra Parshadam, there it also says Sumedashaha. So I was thinking about this intelligence. What is this real intelligence means? That means none of us have this intelligence. It's only the pure devotee has to come and give us that real intelligence. So that was my question to you.
No, it's pretty wonderful. Not just a reflection, it's like a mini Bhagavatam class. You can give us another one. I'll give you one. Coming up soon is, right next to you, Mukunda. Coming up soon is Shamananda Pandit's disappearance day. So I've been reading about and meditating. And it's not one of the well-known pastimes, and it's in Prem Vilas, but there was, he, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the other, Narottam and Srinivas, each of them had particular kirtan styles, and they were teaching through kirtan. Doesn't give, I couldn't find any place where it said which of the styles and how did they use those styles, but it was well known at the time. And not only through, like giving classes through kirtan, that kind of setting, but he would go on Nam Sankirtan. And there was a particular Muslim military man, not even like a ruler, but he is a military man, and his name was Sher Khan. It's described in his biography. And so he, Shamananda, along with others, were going in public place having kirtan, and this Sher Khan heard, because they were loud. And he came and ordered them to stop, or you're all in big trouble. If you're a tough guy. And so they did. They stopped, but they came back the next day in larger numbers. And when he heard the sound and got reports and so forth, he came and he did what happened with Chankasi. He broke the mridanga and took the kartals and threw them in the river. And when that happened, their beards all burst into flame and blood came from their mouths. And they went running. How powerful is this Shamananda? And he came back the next day. They were having kirtan the next day. And he said, he fell at his feet. He said, I had this dream. And the dream, my Lord Allah appeared and transformed his form into a golden form and said, I am the form of that same Lord that they're worshiping. You should fall at his feet and you should take diksha from him. And he became Chaitanya Das. So these, we're not powerful like these people, but Narottam and Srinivas and Shamananda, very, very powerful. But, they went through the rigors of getting trained under Jiva Goswami, and they were also extremely learned and extremely, good receivers of the transcendental message of Jiva Goswami and our great other acharyas, Rupa Goswami, etc. So we should have that eagerness to receive, and then to whatever degree we have our receivers on, we can receive, then we can transmit. And that's our life. And, in abundantly, and fearlessly. That's our life. That's the mission of Chaitanya, the mood and the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and our founder Acharya, right to the very end. Want to share another story? Mukunda, you have something?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I've slowly been reading through Ayendra Prabhu's new biography that just came out.
It's a new one?
New, yeah. Kirtan Revolution.
I haven't seen it.
It came out like a few months ago.
Okay, I got the other one.
Okay.
I haven't read it yet. I have to. Anyway, go ahead.
It's amazing. And there's a description of Ayendra Prabhu's criteria for when devotees were joining the 24-hour Kirtan, that he appreciated enthusiasm, but he also expected a certain level of, talent with musical instruments and timing and things like that. And at least the understanding of the devotees that were close to him was that his mood was he wanted to present the best, offering to Radha Shyamasundar. And so that just being an example, my question is, there's kind of these two moods, one being
Liberal.
Yeah, give all devotees a chance to do services, another being there's scenarios where we want the highest quality of service to be done. So does one necessarily trump the other? And if not, how to decide, when to put quality over?
Ask our host, he has the answer. There's a place for everything. If this one's right, doesn't mean that one's wrong. If that one's right, doesn't mean this one is wrong. There's a place for everything. I mean, let's take another person, Vishnu Chan Swami. And he engaged anybody and everybody. And, by his, he said he had a different mood. And by his mood, he lifted people. And he attracted people who were, he was a love bucket and just splashed love everywhere. And that attracted people. And they became elevated personalities. They weren't just like, misfits. They were amazing people. Gradually. And it was a whole orchestra with, so different moods. And just like, this nice young devotee learning a melody, somehow learning a melody. Think about what you did. Anyway, so if there's a place for everything, and it's not everyone has to be Ayendra or everyone has to be Vishnu Chan Swami either. There can be all kinds of. And then gradually, things start to shape and there's diversity. That story, the diversity story that Prabhupada, he was speaking with a professor from Ireland, I forget his name right now, and Prabhupada was explaining the unity and diversity principle, and he gestured to the vase that was on the table and said, here's a vase of flowers, and it's not all one color or one fragrance. There's diversity, and there's beauty in that diversity. So, diversity. There's beauty in diversity. So there's a place for variety and diversity. And it's, if Ayendra wanted to do, and he did it. Boy, did he do it. And, and someone else can do something similar but different in another place, and another place, and another place. So that diversity is fine. Your question specifically is one better than the other, and I'm saying diversity is fine. The essence is not this approach or that approach. It's the consciousness that Krishna should be pleased. And there are different ways to please. Purity is the force. Yes.
What comes first? Is it the surrender comes first or the humility comes first? That
Surrender
means
comes
what is
first, or
required
what?
for us?
What's the choice now, please?
Humility, surrender. Because a little confused, based on my hearing and understanding, is it the surrender first, then we'll get the humility? Or if you're not even humble, that means we cannot chant Hare Krishna. So how do I?
Is this the chicken and the egg question? What about they go well together? In Krishna's list, humility comes first. Amanitvam badambitvam, you know the verse, chapter 13, text 8 through 12. Humility is first on the list. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur presents the Sharanagati list, it's Dainya comes first. So one could make an argument. This is the diversity view. One could make humility's got to come first. That's it. Humility's got to come first. You can't surrender if you're not humble. How can you surrender if you're not humble? You're not going to surrender if you're not humble. So you got to be humble first. That's the argument. And there's the scriptural reference for it. So there. And then someone else can say, well, if I don't surrender, how am I going to get really the feeling of humility? One can make that argument. They go well together. Please surrender. Yes. Go ahead.
Maharaj, in many of these verses, we're seeing that Prahlada Maharaj is saying to work in the consciousness, his instruction is not to see friends and enemies.
Yes.
So the consciousness it's clear we have to develop that consciousness. How does following his instruction change the behavior? Because you did mention we still have to see distinctions, and a devotee will, and it's human nature. If someone's more favorable, so how does it change behavior? If we have the consciousness that there's no friends and enemies, how will it actually...
You're asking this question for the benefit of everybody in the room because you know the answer.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do. I've been to help people that don't understand. I use visuals a lot, and one of the visuals I use a lot is the iceberg visual, and the tip of the iceberg is what you see, and that's the behaviors and speech and measurable things. And then below that tip of the iceberg is a big part of the iceberg. And so below that is the iceberg notion is values drive behaviors. This is in the Gita Values Seminar, so it's the values drive behaviors. Behaviors can modify values. Values can modify behaviors. You adopt a value, it can be behavior modification, but we're not the International Society for Behavior Modification Incorporated. We're the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So consciousness is the basis and resting place of our values and our behaviors. So when consciousness is awakened and cleansed, both, then behaviors will change because values will also change. No, the idea is to make an alignment between who you are, the values that you hold, and your behaviors. And sometimes people need to go to a chiropractor because they're out of alignment. But by awakening of consciousness, that fundamental part, the bottom of the iceberg, is realities that are unchanging. Values can change, behaviors can change. So how to change behaviors? The essence is Krishna consciousness, but you can also take a look at what your values are and change behaviors because it just doesn't fit what I know is to be done or not to be done. So accept things favorable, reject things unfavorable for Krishna consciousness. That's surrender. Right, Balan Prasad? That's surrender. Sharanagati. Accept things favorable, reject things unfavorable. Because I want to surrender. And I'm humble. I can do it. Ladies. Anyone?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
He's practicing the verse already. Were you just practicing the verse? No? Okay. I thought you were. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Regarding Bhaktivedanta Maharaj's writings, you're saying, I have read few books and the realness, the genuineness, it's really touching to the heart.
Yes. He's a from the heart person all the way.
Yeah. I was actually connecting that to the discussion on humility, Guru Maharaj. It's so evident in his writings. Like, I'm like, really? It really goes to that extent, his humility and pouring of the heart, just being so transparent. So as I'm reading, I felt similar thoughts are in our hearts too as we go through these ups and downs. But there is a stark difference, the way he is expressing. It's so much that calling out to Krishna and Prabhupada.
And Prabhupada.
But if I see here, it's like just frustration about whatever shortcomings and just want to get done with them soon.
You're not the doer. It won't work. It's got to come from another place. Doesn't mean you stop trying. It's just you let that trying back to his, how to change behaviors. You have to go deeper than just the behavior to change behaviors. Go to in the language of the iceberg culture metaphors, the unchanging realities, certainties that are always the same, they don't change. So that's what's being pointed to here in Prabhupada to us through Prahlada and to his teachers. We're servants. That's who, in the very core of our existence is who we are. And if you can connect with who you really are, you're in good shape. So don't just worry about the behavior and the coverings that aren't so nice. Go to the core of who you are. Right? Stop playing with your hat. Yes.
Maharaj, thank you for such a wonderful class. It's like, coming again to these classes, like, it's so wonderful. Maharaj, I was thinking about the negative emotions that you mentioned. And we see in the Bhagavatam how Narad Muni avoided telling Yudhishthira Maharaj the bad news that the Yadus have left and all that. So it seems like in today's world we revel in all the negative things, and
it's the culture that we're in.
Yeah,
it's to how people do things.
Yeah, the gossipy type nature, trying to spread bad things and rumors, and how to really look at the positive. And
well, you're like your son. You know the answer. You just want me to say it. So you be the ventriloquist, and I'll speak the words that you want me to speak.
hearing the answer from you really goes deep in the heart. That's the difference.
But that's how we do with devotees. Katayanta shamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. That's what we do. There's many things to say. I'm just scanning the many things to say, particular for this audience. I'll say this, because I've been dealing with people that don't know much, then the language has to be language that's relatable to the people that don't know much. So I've been referencing a lot because I believe he has a lot of wisdom. He's not like Krishna. That's the best. But, a very wise person is Viktor Frankl in dealing with negative emotions. Very relatable. He has a lot of insight. And one of the things that he says is what man needs is not to find a tensionless state by any means, but what man needs is to have a purpose that's awaiting for them to be fulfilled and striving to fulfill it. That's the positive. So he just puts it in, subjective, non-Krishna conscious, but when you drill on it a little bit, then it becomes Krishna conscious, because what's that potential awaiting for each one of us to be fulfilled as a devotee? It's the change of behaviors, or the Amrita Kelly. It's the wishing that things that are kind of stuck on me, that I wish wasn't stuck on me. I wish it was more genuine. I wish it was more. So that's the purpose awaiting for us to be fulfilled. And we won't reach a position of satisfaction until it's reached, until we get there. So then these are some of the barnacles that have to be knocked off so you can fly down that path or the river to get to that purpose that's awaiting for us to be fulfilled. Higher purpose. And then, and with humility, with surrender, continue to strive in that direction. Don't become complacent, and don't do the other things that people do. Faulting and criticizing and et cetera, instead of serving and being in the mood of let's help one another get to that goal. And that's what Prahlada does. After he's done with his teachers, he's going to go to his friends. He's going to do the same thing in language that is relatable to his friends. He is a giver of pure devotional service. So that's what we could try to do also, follow and try to do also. And then Krishna's mercy will come. And that means the shortcomings, it'll be easier to overcome them because Krishna is smiling and he'll help us overcome them. And so forth. Okay, I think we'll end. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Mahaprasadam.